Well, good morning, everybody. Happy Easter. This is an amazing day today. Wouldn't you agree? You guys look amazing. So I love Easter for a couple of reasons. First of all, because of the risen Jesus, And secondly, we get all dressed up like Easter eggs. So it's an amazing day today. And we're so glad to have you here at Stonehill Church. I don't know if you guys know this. This is our first Easter service ever. Come on, can we celebrate that together? Yeah? And so we're excited, and we're so glad that you're here with us this morning, and we're looking forward to what God's going to do. And so if you're a guest with us, or we want to invite you to come back next week. We're glad you're here today. We want to invite you back next week. We're going to start a new series called Crafted. And why in the world are we here? What is our purpose? And we're going to be looking through the book of Genesis. It's going to be a good series. It's going to be a great series for you to come, bring somebody with you, and we just are excited about it. All right, so it's Easter today. We got a lot of people that maybe aren't normally here. You're guests for the first time. We got people that are normal churchgoers. We have people that maybe aren't normal churchgoers, and we come from all types of different backgrounds. So what I want to do real quick is I want to show us how we're very similar. Like we're very similar in many ways. So what I'm going to do is I want to make a statement, and if you agree with that statement, I want you to say these two words, me too. All right? Can we try that together on a count of three? Ready? 1, 2, 3. All right, that's good. All right, so you can do loud and proud here. So we're going to try it. All right, here we go. I am a person. There you go, not bad. All right, here we go. I am a Boise State fan. All right, and leaving all you U of I fans, I see Leroy. I am a U of I fan. Okay, guys, come on now. I should have heard you guys proud. That's all right. My son's going to be a Vandal next year. All right, here, how about this one? I hate it when people squeeze the middle of the toothpaste tube. Oh, come on, seriously, people. Have some integrity. Just roll the tube up from the bottom. You know what I'm saying? All right, here we go. Here's another one. I purposely set the alarm clock early just so I can hit the snooze button a few different times. Oh, yeah. Why do you guys do it? It doesn't even make sense. Just set it and wake up. Come on now. All right, here's a good one. I push really hard on the remote control even when I know the battery is dying. Why do we do that? Oh, come on, dang it, it's not working. Change the batteries. All right, here's the next one. I pick out all the good candy out of my kids' Easter baskets. We're bad parents. I make my kids tithe off their candy to me, and as a dad, it's just a good rule to live by. Okay, how about this one? I immediately forget the name of the person I was just introduced to. Me too. Some of you guys are going to probably do that today. It's all right. We'll give you some grace here. All right, here's the most important one. I love the music group Boyz II Men. Come on, guys, where are you at? Guys are like, oh, I like listening to Metallica and Guns N' Roses and stuff, At least I didn't say One Direction, or I didn't say NSYNC, all right? Come on, guys. All the girls are backing me up. All right, here we go. Sometimes when someone says something, I just laugh with everyone else, even though I have no clue what that person just said. I don't know. All right. How about this one? When I open a birthday card, I pretend that I'm reading the card, but in reality, I'm just checking to see how much money is there. You greedy people. All right, this one's a little more serious. I sometimes wonder what my purpose is in life. Me too. I am far from perfect. Me too. There are certain things in my life that I struggle with. Me too. You see, these two words can be one of those powerful words in the English language. This idea of me too, when you're going through something, you've experienced something, and someone else comes up to you and just says, me too, man. I've experienced that. There's something about that makes us not feel isolated. It brings power to our lives, and that's really what we want to be as a church. A church, we want to be a Me Too church. That no matter what your struggles are, no matter what your background is, no matter what your questions are about God or faith, a place where you can come in no matter where you've been, and we can say to you, me too. A place where we can introduce you to this guy. His name is Jesus. And no matter where you're at in life, we'll bring you to him, and you'll see him, and he'll accept you as you are. It's okay to not be okay. And then he'll take your life and he'll begin to make you new and transform you, make your life better, filled with more joy and filled with more hope And that's this church that we strive to be. Also, we want to be a church of hope. That's one of the reasons this past couple weeks we've been doing a couple things called the Illumination Offering and the Illumination Projects. A couple weeks ago, we asked you as a church, I just want to brag on our church for a little bit, we asked you as a church to step up and give towards 4 different community organizations that are blessing to our community. The Chrysalis House, the Meridian Food Bank, the Idaho Diaper Bank. I didn't even know there was an Idaho Diaper Bank, but the Idaho Diaper Bank and the Closet, these organizations, they help this community. And so you guys, I want to celebrate this morning. In about a 2-week period, you gave over $7,600 to these organizations. Can we celebrate that together? Because of you, thank you. But not just that. You guys went out and you served too. And over 20-something groups went out and are going out and doing different projects, as you can see through these pictures, throughout our community. And it's a blessing. And why do we do that? Because we want to be a church where of me too, but also a church that we know where the answers are, which is Jesus. And that's why we're here today, is to celebrate the fact that Jesus is alive. And so it's an exciting day for us. This is kind of like the Super Bowl of the Christian world. You know what I'm saying? You know, where we get to celebrate Jesus, and this is what it's all about. Now today, since we're all from different backgrounds, and maybe you're not used to church, or maybe you are used to church, or you're from a different type of church, or you don't go to church at all, I thought it's really important to make sure that we're kind of all tracking together on what the Easter is all about, the Easter story is all about. And so we spend a lot of time, okay? A lot of time to make this video that's very intellectual and very deep, okay? So let's check this out together.
After Jesus died, they put Jesus in a tomb and wrapped him with some white paper. They put a big stone around it and placed guards in front of the tomb to let nobody go in. He was just waiting for the 3 days. He's probably drinking soda while eating hot Cheetos. He would probably play games like Candyland and then have a party by himself. The Easter Bunny was hiding behind a tree. He probably went out there and just throw eggs everywhere, and then he's gonna say, "There's one money egg, so you better find it. You'll get some money." 3 days later, there was a big earthquake. I think we should go away somewhere safe. Psych, I'm getting out of here. The earth is shaking. Run for your lives. And the guards ran off because they got scared. And then on Sunday, Mary and some of her friends came with some spices. But when they got there, the tomb is empty. His clothes only was there. Then an angel came and said, "Don't be afraid. Jesus has risen from the dead. Go tell the good news." Mary and her friends went and told the disciples. She said, "Jesus has risen from the dead." Guys, Jesus has risen from the dead. And the disciples didn't believe them. No, that couldn't happen. Jesus can't raise from the dead. I don't believe it until I see it. But all of a sudden, Jesus came, just was there. I am Jesus. I am the Son of the Lord God. And I am Jesus, your friend. And then the disciples said, "Jesus, it's you. Yay! Jesus is alive!" Totes cool. Jesus, before he left to heaven, he said, "I have done what I have came to do." And then he risen, then he was going up to heaven. His disciples were crowded around him. The disciples said, "Holy guacamole! I can't believe Jesus really flew. That's awesome." Now what? Let's go tell the news.
Holy guacamole! We got some work to do in our children's ministry, I see a little bit. Oh, man. Well, that's why we're here today. To celebrate the risen Lord Jesus And I want us to, just for a moment, I want us to go back to maybe that time, this Sunday, over 2,000 years ago, when Jesus did rise again. But for a moment, I want us to kind of reverse gears for a minute and just understand that this day, this time that this all happened, it wasn't a very hopeful time for them. The first Easter wasn't maybe full of hope, and they weren't all wearing Easter colors and celebrating. For a moment, I want you to think about the Friday and how difficult it was. And this Sunday, Jesus rose from the grave, but I want us to think about, for a moment, the Saturday. Have you ever thought about the Saturday, what the Saturday was like? The fact that there was probably no hope, and these people had lost their friend. They had lost their leader. They had lost their mentor. And ultimately, they probably felt like on that Saturday that their hope was gone. Can you imagine what they experienced on that Saturday? And they felt like their hope was probably being ripped from them on that day. These people, they were struggling. And that's why they needed hope. And that's why there's the resurrection, because they needed hope. But the reality is this: today, as we live in the 21st century in 2017, we too need hope. If you're taking notes today in your handout, that's the first thought this morning I want us to get, is that because of the resurrection, we can have hope. There are moments and there's times and there's seasons in all of our lives where we struggle. What's going to take place? We can't see around the corner. We don't know what's going to happen. But because of the resurrection, we too can have hope. So let's look at the story. I want us to kind of backtrack this morning, Luke 24, and I want us to see what really took place on that weekend. Verse 1 says this: "But very early in Sunday morning, the women went to the tomb, taking the spices they had prepared. They found that the stone had been rolled away from the entrance, so they went in, but they didn't find the body of the Lord Jesus." Now, I want you to get this. When these women went to the tomb, they weren't expecting to find it empty. They were expecting to find the body of Jesus, his dead body laying there. See, what happened on Friday when Jesus was crucified, when he was murdered, it was kind of late at night, and so they were struggling to find a place to put his body. And this man by the name of Joseph of Arimathea, he said, "You can have my tomb, man. You could take it." And so the men, they went and they took the body of Jesus kind of quickly to this tomb and placed it in the tomb that Friday night. And then Saturday happened. And there in that culture, Saturday was a Sabbath, so nothing could happen that day. And that's why the women were going there on Sunday to properly prepare the body of Jesus. So ultimately, the ladies were doing what ladies do and fix mistakes of the men. Am I right, ladies? Come on now, help me out here. Guys, let's just own it. Let's own it this morning. And so they're here, and they're looking in the tomb, and it's empty. And they've been living in the Saturday. They've been living in this difficult day. Friday, there was some hope. I mean, think about it for a moment. Jesus was arrested, and I'm sure they were thinking maybe he'll get kind of let off with a fine. Maybe he'll get a slap on the wrist. Maybe for the worst case scenario, maybe he'll just get put in prison. So Friday there was at least some hope there. Sunday it started out rough, but it ended up very hopeful. Jesus was alive. But on Saturday there was no hope. There was despair. And I can imagine if we were there that day, there would have been a lot of darkness and sadness. You see, I believe that some of us today, we're living in the Saturday. Right now, your marriage is difficult, and there's some hard things happening because you're living in the Saturday. You're parenting. It is hard, man. Your kids are giving you a tough time because you're living in a Saturday. Some of you are having a health crisis. You're struggling with some health issues, and you feel like you're living in the Saturday, and that's what was taking place there. Is they felt like their hope was not there, and they're struggling. And maybe you feel that way today. I would say to you that I feel like we've all been there. Me too. We've all struggled living in the Saturday. I remember over 5 years ago, There was these difficult situations, this difficult circumstance that happened in my life, and what it did because of the circumstances, it really tanked me. I mean, I went into depression. It was hard, and it was difficult. I'm not talking about I was just down for a little bit. I mean, I was depressed. They probably would have qualified me as clinically depressed at that point. And before this moment, if somebody would have walked up to me and said, hey, man, I'm depressed, I would have had this thought in my head. I wouldn't have said it. I would have said, suck it up, buttercup. You know what I'm saying? Like, do what Stuart Smalley does and just know that you're good enough and you're smart enough and doggone it, what? People like you, And I was thinking that's what I would have thought. But then I began to experience this actual lowness in my life and this depression, and I can remember having no hope. I can remember just waking up, and I didn't want to wake up. I just wanted to lay in bed all day long. I just wanted to go to work. I didn't even want to go to work, but when I went to work, I came back home, and I could remember just wanting to lay on the couch all night. My kids wanted to play with me, and I wanted nothing to do with them. My wife said there was like this glaze over my eyes, like I wasn't even there, and I was struggling. All I wanted to do was watch Netflix and watch TV and sleep. Some of you know what I'm talking about because you've experienced anxiety, you've experienced depression, and if you haven't, maybe you know of a loved one that has. And it was dark, and I felt like, am I ever going to have this hope again? And that might be what they felt like on that Saturday back then. Where's the hope in this? But by the grace of God, and friends and family walking around me and praying for me and lifting me up through some intense counseling and me pouring myself out to God every single day and say, God, help me out. The hope began to rise. The fog began to lift, and I began to be able to get above the clouds and have hope again. And the Saturday started to fade away, and I began to realize again the hope and the grace and the love and forgiveness of Jesus Christ. And some of you might today be experiencing the same thing, living in the Saturday. And that's why Jesus came. That's why he died. And that's why he couldn't stay dead, so we can experience the hope and the forgiveness of Jesus Christ. Now, in a moment, I'm going to place something up on the screen, and some of you need to take out your phones, and you need to take a picture of it or write it down in your notes because you need to know this. You need to understand this and understand the reason why Jesus came was for our hope. And here it is, right here. Put it up there. Hope is embracing an unsure future by trusting a sure God. Do you understand that? Let me say that again. Hope is embracing an unsure future by trusting a sure God. And even though we don't know what's around the corner, even though life might seem dark and life might seem difficult, we can trust in a God that's experienced darkness, that has experienced hurt, and know that he is there for us. And because of that, we can put our hope and our trust into Jesus Christ. Now listen, this word hope, it's powerful. It's a powerful word. You know how some words aren't very powerful? Like, I guess there was a study out there that they said people hate the word moist. Does anybody hate that word? Moist? I don't know why I just said that. I didn't even say that in the first service. But they say that they hate that word, but the word hope, there's power behind it. And what's interesting about the word hope is that it's found 71 times in the Bible. Did you know that? But it's only found one time before the resurrection of Jesus. And it's found 70 times after Jesus rises from the dead. I don't think that's coincidence. I believe that there's power in the resurrection. Some of us, we need to understand that, and we need to know that today, that the hope is found in Jesus and Jesus being alive. So what happens? These ladies are at the tomb. There's no body there. Verse 4, this is what takes place. As they stood there, puzzled, two men suddenly appeared to them, clothed in dazzling robes. These men were angels, and I guess, according to the Bible, they're looking pretty fly, okay? They're looking good here. The women were terrified, and they bowed with their faces to the ground. Then the men asked, "Why are you looking among the dead for someone who's alive? He isn't here. He is risen from the dead. Remember what he told you back in Galilee, that the Son of Man must be betrayed into the hands of sinful men and be crucified, and that he would rise again on the third day." Then they remembered that he had said this. You see, this wasn't new news to them. They had already heard this before, and maybe you're here this morning and you've heard this story before. This isn't new news to you. Maybe you're here today and this is a new story for you. You don't know much about the resurrection, but here's what you have to understand today is that Saturday only lasts for a season. When we put our faith and we put our trust into Jesus, Saturday begins to fade away because we know that Jesus is alive and there's hope. And the crucifixion was necessary. Saturday was hard, but Sunday is where the power is. And we have to remind ourselves with that today. We have to remind ourselves that if you're dealing with depression or anxiety, Sunday is already here. Do you get that? There's this story out there that this kind of African-American pastor, he did this message, and it said something like this: it was Friday, and Jesus is crucified, and then he's like, and Sunday's coming. You know what I'm saying? Do you remember that at all? Some of you guys remember that? And so my son Christopher, when he was 5 years old, he loved that video, and he'd walk around the house, and he'd be like, it's Friday, and Sunday's coming, and he'd be like, aha! He'd do that, and I think it's powerful. But I think the thing that we need to remind ourselves this morning is I want you to know this: Sunday's not coming. Sunday's not coming. Sunday is already here. You hear what I'm saying? That's usually a part when I say something like that and you guys are like, yeah! You know what I'm saying? Sunday's not coming because Sunday's already here. There you go. It's Easter, for crying out loud, and Sunday is here. And some of you, you're dealing with anxiety and you're dealing with depression. You have to know, because of what Jesus did, Sunday's already here. Some of you are dealing with health issues and there's a health crisis. Because of Jesus, Sunday is already here. You're struggling with some addiction. You're struggling with wounds and hurts from your past. You have to know that Saturday is gone and Sunday is already here, and we can have hope in that. Sunday is already here. You see, our hope is found in that fact, and I think we can all say this morning, me too. We too need hope. But it's not just hope, it's a little bit more than that. You see, we too need forgiveness. We too need forgiveness. And you might be here and say, I don't need forgiveness. I would say to you, I'm glad you're perfect. I'm glad that you got everything figured out. But one of our values here at Stonehill is this: we are messy, and we're going to embrace the mess. You see, none of us have it perfect. None of us have it figured out. None of us do everything right. We all have issues. And so let's just get real. Let's embrace the reality that in relationships it gets messy, and understand that through the grace of God, He can overcome that messiness. And He gives us hope, but He doesn't just give us hope, He gives us forgiveness. And just like we are messy, just like we have issues, and just like we have problems, so did some of Jesus' closest friends, His disciples. Check out what happens next. Verse 9. So, these ladies, I think they were all going together to the tomb, and then they probably did the pit stop at the bathroom like ladies do, you know what I'm saying? So when they get back, verse 9, they rush back from the tomb to tell His 11 disciples and everyone else. So everybody, they're just letting it rip. Can you imagine what they experienced? Jesus is not dead. This is not normal for them. And so they run to go back and they tell everybody about what happened. It was Mary Magdalene, it was Joanna, it was Mary the mother of James, and several other women who told the apostles what had happened. But the story sounded like nonsense to them, and they didn't believe it. Just for a moment, can we just acknowledge this? That if someone were to talk about someone rising from the dead, that seems like it's a little bit out in left field. I mean, if that happened today, that would be a little crazy for us. And that's what the Bible acknowledges here. And these men, these disciples, the ones that were closest to Jesus, the one that had seen Him do miracles, the one that they'd seen Him raise people from the dead, the one that told these disciples that He was going to actually do this, that He was going to rise from the dead 3 days after. These men who had heard all of that, they even struggled with it, and they didn't even believe it. Now, I think because of the way the story happened, it's actually proof that this happened, okay? Because I'm serious, if I was gonna lie about something like this, I would make the story a little bit cooler. right? A little more climactic, a little more exciting. Like, for instance, if I'm going to tell the story about Jesus rising from the dead and the disciples knowing about it, I would have said it something like this, okay? And the disciples, they knew on Sunday morning that Jesus was going to rise from the dead. So what do? They painted their bodies up like Braveheart, and they begin to walk down the path to the tomb. And as they walk down the path, they're shouting, Jesus is alive! Jesus is alive! And they get to the tomb, and as they line up in the path of the tomb, the countdown begins. 10, 9, 8, and there's a rumbling behind the stone. 7, 6, 5, and this bright light shines behind the stone. 4, 3, 2, 1, boom, and the stone rolls away, and Jesus walks out of the tomb, out of the shadows, with one of those boxing hoodies on, singing to the song, "We are the champions," and the disciples are chest bumping, high-fiving each other, saying, "We did it, baby!" That's how I would do it, it's just me, whatever. That's not what happened, was it? The women found the empty grave, which in today's culture is not a big deal, but I want you to think about this. In that culture, in the first century, women had no rights. Their testimony wouldn't even have held up in the court of law. So if they had to testify to the fact that the tomb was empty, telling everybody the tomb was empty, their testimony wouldn't even stand up in court. And that's the scenario played out. And these men, they're like, no way. No way this happened. Except for one guy. One guy. I believe that one guy did something because perhaps he needed some forgiveness. Check this out, what happens, verse 12. However, Peter, Peter, he jumped up and he ran to the tomb. I mean, can you picture this? Peter gets excited and he runs to the tomb to look. And stooping, he peered in and he saw the empty linen wrappings. Then he went home again, wondering what had happened. I mean, what motivated Peter to do this? I mean, why? I mean, why not some of the other disciples? I mean, think about it. James, the half-brother of Jesus, is sitting in the room. Like, why didn't he jump up? If you were to know that one of your family members was possibly alive, rising again, wouldn't you want to go find out if that happened? But he didn't. But Peter did. Perhaps could have been he needed forgiveness. I mean, Peter, he's all heart and no brains. You know what I'm saying? I can relate to this, okay? And he just said stuff whenever he wanted to say it, and he made all kinds of mistakes. And I want you to think about the night that Jesus was arrested. They're sitting in the upper room, right? And Jesus tells everybody in front of all the disciples, and he says, listen, guess what, Peter? You're going to deny me. And Peter's like, no, I'm not. Come on now, Jesus. And what happens? That night, somebody comes up to Peter and says, hey, aren't you with that Jesus guy? No, I'm not. Another person comes up, aren't you a Christ follower? Nope, not me. Another person comes up, aren't you with that guy who's being arrested right now? Nope. And Peter, this guy who had given his whole life for this man named Jesus on one of the most important nights of Jesus' life, he turns his back on him and he denies him. Can you imagine what Peter was feeling on Saturday? The guilt and the shame. And so for the first time in 48 hours, Peter finally senses hope. And what does he do? He runs. He doesn't walk. He runs to find Jesus. Some of you this morning, you're struggling with something in your past, something you said, something you did. Maybe it was a relationship that went bad, an affair, a divorce. There's some kind of health crisis. You're struggling. You're living with this guilt. Something you said to your child that you can't take away. Somewhere you went, you shouldn't have gone, and you're living with this guilt, and you're living with this shame, just like Peter was living with right then, and you're living in that Saturday. I'm going to tell you this morning, that just as Peter was going to receive forgiveness, so does God want that forgiveness for you. And so right now, I want us to listen to this this song. It's got some powerful lyrics and powerful words to it. But even more importantly, there's a story of one of our church members, church attenders, that has a powerful message about forgiveness. Let's check this out.
Between my fingertips, I've hidden in the garden. I've denied you with my very lips. God, I fall down to my knees with a hammer in my hand. You look at me, arms open. Forgiven, forgiven. Child, there is freedom from all this. Say goodbye to every sin. You are forgiven. I wish I hadn't done. I've seen things I wish I hadn't seen. Just the thought of your amazing grace, and I cried, Jesus, forgive me. God, I fall down to my knees with a hammer in my hand. You look at me, arms open. Forgiven, forgiven. Child, there is freedom from all this. Say goodbye to every sin. You are forgiven. You are forgiven.
When I was about 14 is, when I discovered drugs, and my relationship with that really started. Some of the real low places in my life, after my alcoholism really started to progress at around age probably 20, 21. It's about the same time I met my wife. At the time was my girlfriend. We dated for about 4 years. And I was working full-time for a large dealership, making pretty good money, but my drinking was progressing. So we decided to move to Boise from Montana, and in hopes of, maybe getting a fresh start, a new beginning. The problem was my alcoholism followed with us. And so I just started, really spiraling downward with the drinking. And got to a point where I ended up getting a DUI with my family in the car. It was one of the most humiliating points in my life. My wife ended up leaving me shortly after that for about 6 months, and I was just absolutely hopeless. I couldn't stop drinking. I felt like I had lost it all. When I was 33, after years of putting my family through this and just not seeing a way out, one weekend after I had drank quite a bit, we had gotten into an argument, my wife and I, and I know that she was checked out at this point, and it just hurt me to my soul, and I knew that there had to be a better way. And I was sitting in my garage one afternoon, and I just cried out. I said, God, please help. There has to be a better way. Life can't be like this. There's got to be a better way. And so going through treatment, it was very scary. But I knew that if I believed in God and I had faith, and if I surrendered, if I finally stopped fighting this battle that I had been fighting for so long, I had to trust the process that God would forgive me. I carried so much shame and guilt from all the things I had done over the years, to my family, to my children, to my poor wife. And so I carried a lot of that burden on my shoulders, and I just had to trust. And as I went through the process, I could feel God working in my life, and I felt this new life inside of me that I had been wanting for so long. I finally felt just forgiven. Certainly my life isn't perfect today, but I can honestly tell you that through this process, I literally am not the same man that I was then. God continues to bless me in my life, and He's working through our marriage. He's strengthening our marriage. I feel like I'm a much better father than I ever was. And life's hard, life is challenging, and we're going to face those trials, but the trials are what cause us to grow. And I'm grateful for this journey. Had I not faced those trials, I wouldn't be who I am today. As without God, I most certainly wouldn't be here.
Lost forever. Yeah, I should be in that fire. Now there's fire inside of me. Could have been 6 feet under. Could have been lost forever. Yeah, I should be in that fire. Now there's fire inside of me. Here I am, a dead man walking. No grave gonna hold God's people. All the weight of all of our evil lifted away, forever free. Who could believe? Who could believe? Forgiven. You love me even when I don't deserve it. Forgiven. I am forgiven. Say goodbye to every sin. I am forgiven. I am forgiven. I am forgiven.
Maybe you're here this morning and you feel that way. You feel that you need forgiveness and you need hope. I can tell you, me too. We've all been there. We've all experienced, no matter where we are on this journey of life, we need the hope and the forgiveness. And the cool thing about it is because Jesus came to this earth and He left everything because He loved you and I so much. And He lived a perfect life because He was God and yet He was man, and He died, but He didn't stay dead. He rose again, and because that He rose again, we have freedom. When we put our faith and our trust into Jesus, we have freedom in this life to have hope and experience forgiveness. So you're here this morning and you might be wondering, then how am I made right with God? How do I experience a relationship with God? Well, Paul talks about this in Romans 3:22, and it's very plain and very easy. He says that we're made right with God by placing our faith into Jesus Christ. In Jesus Christ alone. The Bible says there's no other way. He's the truth. He's the life, and no one comes to God the Father except through Jesus. We can't go through any other religious leaders. We can't experience it through Buddha or Allah or anyone else. But Jesus Christ, He is God. Notice that it doesn't say this. It says this is true for everyone who believes, not that you have to be made right in God if you're good enough. You're not made with God, right with God if you're not bad. You're not made right with God if you just don't cuss as you're on the golf course. You're not made right with God if you don't yell at your kids, or you're not made right with God if you don't get in a fight with your spouse on the way to Easter church. You know what I'm saying? Some of you did that this morning, right? There's nothing that we can do to be made right with God. It's all about Him. It's all about what He has done. And this is true for everyone, no matter where you are at, no matter how bad you've been, no matter what your life has been up to this point. You and I can never be good enough. But because of what Jesus did for us, He is good enough for all of us. And that is the gospel. That is the good news. Listen, it's not about being religious. Some of you are like, I'm not religious. I'm not religious either. It's about being in a relationship with Jesus. See, religion's all about what we have done and how we perform, but a relationship's all about what Jesus has done and how He has performed for us. It puts it all on Him, and all we have to do is accept His free gift. And maybe you're here today and you need that hope and you need that forgiveness. You need to understand that God loves you dearly. The Bible tells us that we're all sinners, that we're all messy, right? We've talked about that. We're all messed up. But because He's loved us so much, He wants us to give us a way out. He wants to give us the ability to be in right standing, in a right relationship with God. And that's by putting our faith and trust in Jesus Christ. And I believe that some of us here this morning, you're ready to do that for the very first time. I'm going to pray, and then we're going to just talk for a minute with your heads bowed and eyes closed. But let's start off with praying together. Can we do that? God, this morning, right now, we come to You, and we're just so thankful as we think about this story and the hope. And as we celebrate Easter and what it's all about, God, it's the pinnacle of this story, this God story. It's the climax. And now You have come to give us new life. And so thank You for that this morning. With everyone's heads bowed and eyes closed, maybe you're here today and there's someone in your life that you are burdened for. This morning, God has even placed a burden on you. Maybe they're here with you today. Maybe they're not here with you at church, but you know they need the hope and the forgiveness of Jesus, and you want prayer for them. And you would say right now, I have someone in my life that I would like for you to pray for. And many of us should be like this. If you're like that this morning, say, I have someone that needs Jesus. Would you slip up your hand right now? Come on, just slip it up. Should be so many of us. Yes, so many of us. Yes, I'm going to pray for them right now. God, I pray for all the hands that were raised, which represents a person in the life of the people that are here today. God, I don't know what You're doing in their lives, but I know that You are powerful and You're hopeful. And I pray that, God, You would move them, stir their hearts to see You. Everyone's heads bowed and eyes closed still. We're praying, and maybe you're here today and this isn't your first rodeo. You've been to church before and you've experienced this story and this message. You've heard it before. This isn't news to you. And you have the head knowledge. You know about the resurrection. You know about Jesus. But let me say this, you don't have the heart. You don't have it in your heart. And maybe today you need to move it 18 inches from your head to your heart and really lean into Jesus and give your life to Him. Maybe today this is one of your first times of being in a church, and maybe it's not your first time, but this whole idea of a relationship is new. You've always thought it's about what you do, and you've always thought it's about religion and doing certain things, but that's not the case. And this morning you're hearing that and you feel like your heart is being drawn to God. That's not by accident. God is working in your heart. He's working in your life right now, and He's wanting to do something new and afresh in your life and give you new life. And I believe there are many of you here this morning that need to know Jesus and surrender your heart to Jesus for the very first time in your life today. So I'm gonna ask you to have some courage. In a moment, I'm going to count to 3. And if you want to give your life to Jesus, if you realize you're a sinner and you want to commit your life to Jesus this morning and you want to give him your all and understand that he has given you his all and you want to give your life to him, I'm going to ask you to raise your hand and just be proud. The lights are dark. No one's looking around. No one's really looking this morning. But I'm going to ask you to have some courage. If you want to give your life to Jesus today, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to have you raise your hand on the count of 3. Are you ready? Be strong, be proud. Here we go. Ready? 1, 2, 3. I want to give my life to Jesus today. Yes. 1, 2. Many of you, keep it raising. Come on. Some of you rest. Yes. Don't be ashamed. Be proud. There's at least 8 to 10 of you raising your hands today. That is awesome. It's awesome. You can put your hands down. Everybody's still not looking. This is what we're going to do today. If you just raise your hand and you want to give your life to Jesus, I'm going to say a prayer. The prayer isn't magical. It's really about your heart and giving your life to Jesus. It's really about a commitment to him. And so I'm going to say this prayer. And what I want to do is everybody to pray this with me, even if you're already a Christ follower, because we want to encourage and support the people that just raise their hand, okay? So I'm going to say a prayer, and I want you to repeat after me. And if you just raise your hand, I really want you to make this a commitment to God, but I want everybody to pray together. Here we go. Repeat after me. Dear God, I know that I'm a sinner, and I know my life is messy, but I know you sent your son Jesus to die for me, but he rose again on the 3rd day, and I believe that he is the way, he's the truth, and he's the life. So today I commit my life to you. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. Can everybody look up at me real quick? So here's what I want to do. I don't know about you, but this gets me pretty excited. And there was at least 8 to 10 people that just raised their hand to give their life to Jesus. Can we celebrate that together, church? Isn't that awesome? Yes. So awesome. So cool.